Hello, my dear beloved children. Today I want to start a topic that more fully reflects the events currently taking place on Earth. I hope that you will be able to perceive everything that I am about to tell you calmly and impartially. As you are already aware, several thousand years ago, hostile creatures arrived on your planet, the race of dragons, who subsequently created the race of reptilians, called to be their protégés on Earth. Unlike the draconians, the reptilians managed to assimilate into human society so much that some of them began to have sexual relations with humans, resulting in the appearance on Earth of hybrids carrying both reptilian and human genes. In connection with this, the program originally embedded in the reptilians in such hybrid creatures began to change under the influence of qualities inherent in humans. Gradually, the symbiosis of these two races and their constant interaction brought humanity to the brink of extinction, which will be discussed in my next messages. The dragons themselves rarely incarnate in human bodies, since this poses a great danger to them. And it consists in the fact that it is very difficult for them to constantly maintain a human appearance, and their true face in certain situations manifests itself outwardly. Therefore, in order to protect themselves, the draconians created another subrace, the Dracoreptiles, which are already a hybrid of the draconians and the reptilians. They are the ones who make up the top of the deep state, which has been deciding the fate of humanity for centuries. They are also present in almost all royal dynasties on Earth, since from time immemorial it was the royal families that owned most of the lands on your planet. The colonies that existed and still exist on Earth are their creation. Hundreds of millions of people have lived in poverty and slavery for centuries at the behest of this evil race that once took over your planet. Unlike the reptilian race they created, they themselves lived on the subtle plane of the Earth, or rather, even in a world parallel to yours. In fact, there are many such worlds on your planet, both high vibrational and low vibrational. High vibration ones include, for example, Agartha, whose inhabitants carry vibrations from the 5th dimension to the 8th. The low vibration ones include the Greys, who over time began to actively cooperate with the Dracoreptiles. There are also civilizations among them that can be conditionally called neutral. One of them is the representatives of the 7 planets, whose messages you can find on this site. This civilization has great technical knowledge, but is not spiritual enough. However, unlike the Greys, it cannot harm people, since the vibrations of its inhabitants are close to the 4th dimension. But let's return to the dragon race. It was they who had the greatest influence on the lives of Earthlings, since they came to your planet with one single purpose: to completely enslave it. They did not succeed in this right away, since the divine gene of the inhabitants of the Earth at that time was so strong that the dragons could not break through the vibrational barrier separating people from the low vibrational beings that they were. And then they resorted to genetic engineering, which they already had. First, the reptilians were created, creatures that had the appearance of a human, but carried the genes of the draconians. They were originally programmed with programs of power, control, and greed. Like the draconians themselves, these beings lacked empathy, for if they had, they would not have been able to carry out the task assigned to them of enslaving humanity. Gradually, the dragons began to populate the Earth with these creatures, who quickly found out the weak spots of Earthlings, their openness, trustfulness, and kindness, which they began to use for their own purposes. Thus, gradually, using flattery and deception, they increasingly penetrated human society, as a result of which more and more mixed family unions began to appear on Earth, in which, depending on the circumstances, either pure human souls or pure-blooded reptilians or hybrids, owners of 2 souls, were born, which, unfortunately, continues to this day. Let us discuss more detail about the role that Dracoreptiles play in your society. These creatures, unlike the reptilians, try to stay in the shadows, although it is they who decide the fate of humanity. With rare exceptions, puppets are visible in public space, completely under their control, and under no circumstances have the opportunity to make their own decisions. This is exactly what is happening on the world stage now. You see how one after another, literally, European states are being destroyed as a result of the policies of their governments directed against their own people. It was not always like this. Periodically, people came to power who thought about the interests of their citizens and led their countries to prosperity. But as soon as this happened, the Draco reptiles intervened in the situation and, with the help of their protégés in the political, economic, and financial spheres, brought these countries out of a state of well-being and prosperity by unleashing wars or organizing financial and economic crises. And they always had such opportunities, since the first thing they did upon coming to Earth was to take over all financial institutions, placing their representatives in all key positions. From usury to the banking credit system, they have constantly kept and continue to keep people in financial slavery. All this happened gradually and secretly from people, and at present they own almost all the financial resources of the Earth. They managed to do this, among other things, because they always considered themselves chosen. Their chosenness consisted in the fact that they were cunning, insidious, and dodgy, unlike people with their pure thoughts and open souls. Lacking empathy and compassion, the Draco reptiles stopped at nothing to achieve their goals. Casteism became their tool and means of existence. The Draco reptiles never stooped to communicating with the rabble, as they called the common people, for whom they always felt contempt, while simultaneously profiting from their gullibility and kindness. Thus, gradually, two parallel worlds that never intersected were formed on Earth: the deep state, in which the Draco reptiles existed, and many countries controlled by them, but outwardly living their own lives. I will now tell you in more detail what the deep state is. This expression is on everyone's lips now, but many people don't fully understand its meaning. The very word state in this phrase already indicates that this is not just a secret society or a group of people trying to rule the world, but a state with all its attributes. Its activities have many directions: political, military, economic, financial, social, religious, cultural, educational, medical, which in turn are divided into many components. They can be compared to the ministries you are used to, each of which has its own area of activity. Thus, each of the divisions of the deep state has its own ministers, who determine policy in the areas for which they are responsible. But the goals of these ministries are not aimed at improving people's lives, but at their maximum enslavement and moral degradation. The deep state is a kind of anti-world in which everything is turned upside down, and the motto "divide and rule" underlies all its actions. The structure of this state is also similar to the structure of the state structure that you are accustomed to. But the hierarchy of power there is more strict and merciless. Since Draco reptiles are not characterized by empathy and compassion, their relationships are built on completely different principles than those inherent to people. They are connected not by friendship, warm affection, and mutual respect, but by caste, a sense of being chosen, as well as common goals and means of achieving them. Their main goal is to lower the vibrations of people as much as possible and turn them into obedient slaves of the system that they created on Earth. Only in this way, by suppressing the free will of man and forcing him to forget about his divine origin, could they achieve their goal. Now, we will talk about the means by which the Draco reptiles achieve their goals. The deep state they have created can be compared to a web into which, through numerous tricks, they lure their victims, the inhabitants of the Earth. This web is the very matrix that has already been talked about so much. So what does it really represent? The matrix is an energetic, mental, and emotional construct based on a certain system of values designed to enslave the consciousness of people. But of course, the values of the Draco reptiles have nothing in common with the moral and ethical values of people. They carry opposite meanings and significance. If universal human values such as love, gratitude, compassion, and kindness contain high divine vibrations, then the values of the Draco reptiles are hatred, ingratitude, heartlessness, and cruelty, which have the lowest vibrations. But it is precisely these negative low vibrational energies that are the breeding ground for these beings and their servants, the reptilians. And all their actions towards humanity were committed in the name of their own survival on your planet. The Earth itself turned out to be energetically too pure for them, unsuitable for the life of these soulless creatures. people were just as pure at the dawn of mankind. And then, for the sake of self-preservation, the Draco reptiles began a war against the inhabitants of this beautiful planet. They hated people simply because they carried within themselves the gene of God, which they themselves were deprived of due to their origin. And they decided at all costs to prove their superiority over people by turning them into their slaves. You can trace this fierce hatred of theirs for pure human souls throughout the history of the earth. It continues to this day, having already reached its peak. That's where we'll stop today. The Father Absolute, who loves you immeasurably, spoke to you.